I'm 50 now, and I had my abortion when I was 18.
I was pretty young. I was 21, and I was in a relationship that wasn't very serious, per se.
And I can still remember sitting there in utter horror. And every thought was obliterated by the shame and the shock and the panic. And all I could think about was, how do I get myself out of this terrible mess as quickly as possible? And I had an abortion within the hour. I didn't take time to think about it.
I made the decision out of fear. Fear of embarrassment, fear of the neighbors finding out, fear of the people that I went to school find out about, my friends find out. The decision was made out of fear.
I chose it. I chose to have an abortion.
Statistics show that 1 in 6 of all North American women have experienced abortion at least once. According to Jenny McDermott, most haven't had a safe place to deal with the loss. McDermott is the author of Living in Color, a book about post-abortion recovery.
I would have to say that sadly, it continues to be the dark secret. The dark secret. And it is a profoundly disturbing topic, and so women are not talking.
For years, McDermott carried her own dark secret before realizing she couldn't deny its impact on her life anymore.
I realized that this life of pretense was something that I could not keep up for the rest of my life. Some women go into meltdown immediately after an abortion procedure, and others can keep things buttoned down for a long time, and I was one of those. But there was a deadness and a flatness and a grayness to my life that I just could no longer deny. And wonderful things were happening around me, but I just didn't feel as if I could engage with joy. I just had refused to go to that place where I could resolve that loss.
Dion had her abortion over 13 years ago and says the journey to recovery has not been an easy one.
I just pushed it down, pretended it didn't happen, but I found that something had really changed within me. I didn't trust myself anymore. I didn't trust other people anymore. I built a wall around myself. I didn't let anybody in. I turned to, I guess sort of cliches like drinking and drugs and food, and just to block people away and just build a wall.
And though she later became a Christian and found community in her church, she still carried the feelings of shame.
I didn't share it with any of my friends that I met that were believers. If they really knew me, really know what I had done, they wouldn't really like me anymore.
Shame, says author Jenny McDermott, is a common emotion for many women after an abortion, especially in the church.
You've got to understand that an abortion choice, this kind of grief, is particularly difficult because we've brought it on ourselves, and it is our own child that is lost at our own hand. And when you consider how the pro-life people and Christians feel about it and think about their condemnation, they hate what we have done. But believe me, they don't hate what we have done as much as we hate what we have done. And we have to live with that, the reality of that.
McDermott says there are few safe places to turn to for those wanting to get help.
And we've got these widely polarized camps. So over here we've got the pro-lifers, the Christians, and of course over here we've got the pro-choice. But neither of those places is a safe place for a woman wrestling with post-abortion turmoil. She's afraid of being judged and condemned if she goes to the pro-lifers. But if she goes to the pro-choicers, they do not want to hear that there's any negative fallout, because they're promoting their idea that it's a woman's body, it's her choice, it's a way out of a tight spot, and it's supposed to bring relief and not grief.
And that's why she created the Living in Color course, an 8-week course run out of the Calgary Pregnancy Care Centre that provides a safe place for women to work through their grief.
Many women who come to see us cannot even say the word. They'll say the procedure, or they'll use the expression, the A word, or they can't even verbalize the word. They are so traumatized by it.
Uta Whitmire is the Centre Director at the Calgary Pregnancy Care Centre. Though they've offered help to women dealing with abortions for more than 20 years, she says few women have had the courage to process their grief.
So sometimes it takes years. We had one woman who told us that she called us and, got a really good response because she was really struggling with the issue. And it took her 2 years to make that next call and actually come into the center. And then it took her some time again before she actually was able to do a grief group.
Though she had worked through some of her grief through a church support group, Dion knew there were still unresolved issues. After digging up a contact number for Jenny McDermott, she was invited to participate in the Living in Color course.
Part of me is always like, I want to, because I want to get healed, and I believe that it's time, especially going into the field that I want to get into. I want to be balanced, I want to be healthy and strong, but to go back and relive the whole experience and addressing all the anger and bitterness and that I wasn't, I guess, overly enthralled or excited to do, but I knew it would be worth it.
Susan, not her real name, says she woke up suddenly in the middle of the night on the 30th anniversary of her abortion.
The light bulb went on and I finally realized that I'd spent the last 30 years sort of hating my mom, hating myself, not being able to come to terms with what I had done.
Susan's mother encouraged her to have the abortion, saying it would release her from the trap of early motherhood or a marriage of convenience. But in fact, she says, it did the opposite.
When you have a secret inside that's so shameful and painful, you just start to shut off everything in your life. You shut down in your relationships, you shut down in any dreams you may have had about, your life or the direction it was going to go. You're just functioning at such a lower level that instead of keeping all the doors open for your future, like you said, it really destroys them.
After 30 years of keeping that secret, Susan began attending the Living in Color course.
I think one of the most powerful things about the group is early on, you actually write out your personal story and you read it out loud to the group. And it's one thing to know the story you personally inside, but to be able to speak your truth and admit this is what happened, this is what I did.
To be in a group that there is no judgment, you're not alone. The other women there have been through a similar experience. Their stories are different, and just to be there for someone else and someone's there for you, I find that really comforting.
I love group and I love grief groups because people come in, they can't even look at you. And they're downcast and they're worried about confidentiality and they're upset and they're not looking at each other. And when they leave the group, their faces change. They are really, they're smiling, they're laughing, they're whole new people almost. And because they have finally let out the secret, they finally dealt with that grief issue. And their lives are changed, and it is the most profoundly moving experience.
Dion says that she's moving beyond the self-hatred and destructive behavior and has enrolled in a nursing program.
I feel like empowered, and I feel ready to take on what new challenges and to sort of forget myself and just work on helping others and being a blessing to others.
Susan's post-abortion journey has given birth to the dream that began before she had her abortion.
So one of the things I've done is I've gone back to school and I'll graduate in September this year, so at 50, I will finally have my college diploma, and it's pretty emotional, but it's, you know, better late than never.
Susan has also reconciled with her mother, finally finding the love and relationship she longed for.
You need to turn to God and understand that the purpose of my life is not to live in shame for the next, you know, decade or decades, but it's how can I take this experience and turn it into empathy for other people.
Every kind of brokenness creates cracks through which the light of the Spirit can enter, with healing and new life, and it might be life that would never have been realized had it not been for that tragic incident, and for me that was abortion, that created the brokenness in the first place. So eventually the Spirit did creep in through the cracks in my own brokenness and brought me healing and salvation, and also a deep love and concern for other women who'd been broken by abortion as I had.
Dion echoes the same love and concern, knowing what it is to shed such a dark secret and emerge into the light, and encourages those hurting to take that first step.
For anyone who is dealing with their own abortion experience or knows anybody of it, that there's hope and there's help, and just to have some courage and pick up the phone and make an appointment to call whatever agency where they are. It'll probably be the hardest phone call that they'll make, but they won't regret it. They'll get a new lease on life.